The universe is transformation. Our life is what our thoughts make it. Life is not meant to be constant struggle, yet for most, every day feels like resistance, against time, against others, against themselves. We chase more, reach further, and wonder why peace slips further away. The truth is not hidden, it is ignored. Life becomes easier not when the world changes, but when the mind learns how to move through it correctly. This is the discipline of the Stoic, to understand what matters, to let go of what doesn't, and to live each day with the calm precision of reason. Ease is a skill, not a gift. It must be built deliberately, through perspective, discipline, and awareness. The Stoics lived in turbulent times, wars, politics, uncertainty, yet they spoke constantly of serenity. They mastered the same chaos we face today by mastering themselves. In their wisdom lies a blueprint for modern strength, to simplify, to detach, to act without noise. The one who learns this art no longer needs the world to cooperate. They create ease internally and carry it into every storm. This is not a lecture about escape. It is a guide for engagement. The Stoic does not retreat from life's weight. They refine their grip until it no longer feels heavy. They control what they can, accept what they can't, and find balance between both. In this lecture, we will uncover 9 ways to make life easier this year, 9 Stoic disciplines that restore calm, clarity, and command. When you understand that power, life begins to change. The struggle fades because you become stronger, calmer, sharper. This is how to make life easier. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Control what you can, accept what you can't. Life becomes easier the moment control is understood as a boundary, not a battle. The Stoics taught that peace begins where resistance ends, and resistance ends where clarity begins. Epictetus wrote that some things are within our power and some are not. That simple division defines the line between inner freedom and constant frustration. The modern person spends their energy where it cannot yield results, in opinions, trends, the behavior of others, the unpredictable waves of society. The Stoic understands that the world does not bend to will, it bends to order. The only true order begins within. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the universe is change and life is opinion. He meant that events are neutral until interpreted. The wise person learns to filter the noise that surrounds them, knowing that attention is a form of power. Social media, politics, gossip, and markets are storms without anchors. The more one stares into them, the more one is pulled in. The Stoic remain centered, not because they are detached from the world, but because they refuse to be enslaved by what cannot be mastered. The discipline of acceptance is not weakness, it is clarity refined into calm. Acceptance is misunderstood as surrender. In Stoicism, it means recognition of structure, an understanding that the world is governed by forces beyond personal preference. The Stoic does not fight the wind, they set their sail. Life becomes simpler when one ceases to waste strength on the impossible. To control what can be controlled is to return focus to the present moment. Actions, decisions, words, and responses. All else belongs to fate, and to fight fate is to drain the soul of serenity. Every complaint begins with the refusal to accept. The person who resents reality resents their own limitations. The person who resists reality resists peace. The Stoic recognizes that every reaction is a choice. When the world behaves unjustly, they maintain justice in their conduct. When circumstances collapse, they maintain structure in their mind. This is not passivity. It is mastery of placement, the art of standing firm where one has influence and silent where one does not. The modern world invites distraction and reaction. Platforms reward outrage, trends reward conformity, and the noise of others drowns out reason. The Stoic filters this flood. They decide where attention goes, because attention builds thought, and thought builds life. By filtering attention, the Stoic filters existence. The mind becomes clean when it stops collecting what does not serve it. Acceptance begins here, the deliberate act of letting the uncontrollable pass by without friction. To control what one can is to live with precision. Every moment holds a decision that belongs entirely to oneself. To be patient, to act with integrity, to think with discipline. These are domains that no external event can invade. The Stoic builds a fortress in behavior, not in avoidance. Their calm is not gifted by peace, but earned through order. When others lose balance, they hold posture. When outcomes fail, they remain functional. This is the hidden strength of acceptance, not to yield, but to stand cleanly before what is. Peace cannot be achieved by changing everything that disturbs you. It begins by changing your relationship to disturbance itself. The Stoic mind does not require ideal conditions to remain steady. They understand that calm is an internal posture, not a reward from the environment. By detaching from demands of control, they move through life without resistance. This is how the difficult becomes simple, how chaos becomes manageable, how time feels lighter, not through possession of outcomes, but through possession of oneself. Epictetus taught that we suffer not from events, but from our judgments about them. To see clearly is to stop exaggerating the importance of what cannot be shaped. Anxiety is the product of trying to manage what belongs to fortune. Ease is born from mastery of attention. To make life easier this year, one must practice this constant division, to see what can be directed and what must be accepted. The clarity of that distinction removes noise, shortens reaction, and restores peace. Life simplifies as the mind withdraws from argument with reality. When one stops demanding that events follow preference, energy returns to what matters: character, work, and presence. The person who accepts that the world is as it is can finally operate cleanly within it. They no longer negotiate with what has already happened. They move from resistance to response, from emotion to execution. The result is calm action, a life lived with fewer interruptions from the unnecessary. The Stoic filters their exposure like a guard filters entry to a fortress. They allow no ungoverned thought to enter. They remain selective with what occupies their mind, knowing that each thought can either stabilize or scatter them. The discipline is constant, to direct attention to what depends on choice, to stay aware that peace is not a passive gift from calm conditions, but an earned result of internal structure. The one who learns this lives lighter, moves cleaner, and carries less conflict within. Acceptance does not mean approval of misfortune. It means understanding that misfortune cannot dictate virtue. When loss appears, the Stoic accepts its presence, then acts rightly within its boundaries. When failure occurs, they respond with composure. When the world disappoints, they hold their standard. The external world may fall apart. The internal one must not. Life becomes easier when that principle is maintained without exception. To make life easier this year, one must build the habit of filtering attention. Each morning, decide what belongs to control and what belongs to acceptance. The weather, the economy, other people's moods, these do not belong to control. Your thoughts, discipline, patience, and effort, these do. Everything else is excess. Every argument with reality is lost the moment it begins. Every acceptance of reality is won before it requires effort. Ease begins with structure, and structure begins with understanding what is yours and what is not. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That single line is the architecture of peace. The person who obeys this truth ceases to waste strength on what cannot be altered. They stop living reactively and begin living rationally. The world remains turbulent, but their center holds steady. That steadiness is the root of ease, a mind unmoved by what it cannot command. In every season, in every difficulty, the Stoic keeps this distinction alive: control and acceptance, effort and allowance, will and peace. Life does not need to be fought constantly. It needs to be understood. The clearer one becomes about the limits of control, the more they conserve energy for creation, discipline, and purpose. In that economy of effort lies the quiet advantage of the Stoic, the art of living without unnecessary struggle, and the ease that follows when the soul no longer argues with the world. Chapter 2. Simplify your wants. Ease begins with subtraction. The Stoics and the ancients who came before them understood that the burden of life rarely comes from the lack of things, but from the excess of them. Socrates said that the secret of happiness is found in wanting less, not in having more. The person who learns to need little becomes unshakable, for no circumstance can rob them of contentment when their contentment is not dependent on circumstance. The art of simplicity is not poverty. It is power, the ability to live well with less, to think clearly without clutter, to move freely without attachment. Epictetus taught that freedom is the natural reward of limitation. To want less is to return to the natural boundaries of the self. The modern world expands desire endlessly. Every screen, every platform, every advertisement whispers the same lie. That happiness is waiting just beyond the next acquisition, the next upgrade, the next comparison. The Stoic rejects this invitation to hunger. They understand that desire has no finish line. The more one feeds it, the more it consumes. To simplify wants is to stop the cycle of chasing, to cut the chain of dependence that binds the mind to things that cannot satisfy. The clutter of modern life is not only physical, but mental. The digital world multiplies wants faster than one can fulfill them. Each scroll introduces a new comparison, a new standard, a new illusion of what life should look like. The Stoic filters this noise. They use technology, but they do not let technology use them. They consume content without letting it shape their values. They understand that every unnecessary exposure trains desire to expand beyond reason. Life becomes easier when one becomes selective with inputs. A quiet mind begins with a quiet environment. The Stoic is not impressed by abundance. They measure wealth by independence, not accumulation. To have much and need little is the true mark of fortune. The person who needs constant novelty, constant validation, constant stimulation, lives as a slave to the next moment. The Stoic trains the will to find satisfaction in the essential: a clear mind, a sound body, honest work, and inner stillness. The fewer the dependencies, the stronger the freedom. This reduction is not deprivation, it is liberation. Simplicity requires courage because it stands against the current of society. It requires rejecting the endless appetite of consumption that defines modern culture. To simplify wants is to detach from what the crowd pursues. It is to live by principle rather than persuasion. The Stoic does not need approval for this restraint. They find strength in being unseen by the noise, untouched by the trends, and uninterested in the race that exhausts others. In this withdrawal, life slows, clarity returns, and peace becomes the natural state. The person who simplifies their life discovers time. Complexity steals hours through maintenance and management. Every unnecessary desire creates new obligations. Every possession demands protection. Every distraction requires recovery. The Stoic minimizes to maximize. They remove the excess that drains attention from what truly matters: discipline, wisdom, and service. To live simply is to reclaim the hours that complexity steals, to move through the day with deliberate ease instead of fragmented urgency. Socrates lived with almost nothing and yet possessed everything that mattered. His wealth was his mind, his independence, and his indifference to public opinion. The same principle remains unchanged. The one who depends on less fears less. The one who owns little is owned by little. The reduction of wants is the purification of anxiety. Modern humans chase pleasure as if discomfort were the enemy, yet it is often comfort that enslaves. The Stoic finds comfort in clarity, not in excess. Decluttering begins not with objects but with identity. The Stoic asks, what do I truly need to function, to think clearly, to live rightly? This question cuts through illusions. It exposes false needs and imagined dependencies. When one answers honestly, most of what burdens the day becomes unnecessary. Goals simplify, relationships refine, and priorities align. To live simply is to move in straight lines, not in circles. Complexity is noise pretending to be progress. The reduction of wants extends to ambition. The Stoic does not confuse direction with desire. They act with purpose, but are free from compulsion. They aim high, but their peace does not depend on reaching the peak. Their satisfaction is found in the clarity of effort, not in the illusion of endless achievement. When ambition becomes purified of vanity, it becomes discipline. When discipline replaces craving, peace replaces exhaustion. Digital simplicity is the new frontier of self-command. Every platform is designed to expand craving. To live simply in the digital age is to resist design itself, to choose stillness in a system built for stimulation. The Stoic applies ancient discipline to modern tools. They set boundaries, not to restrict themselves, but to protect their attention. They curate what they see, limit what they consume, and remain masters of the screen rather than its subject. Digital declutter is modern asceticism, not isolation, but sovereignty. To simplify wants is to simplify emotions. Desire and disturbance are connected. Every new want opens a new possibility of frustration. Every unnecessary expectation creates potential disappointment. The fewer the wants, the fewer the disturbances. The Stoic does not suppress desire, they refine it. They train desire to serve reason, not emotion. This redirection stabilizes the inner life. Calm is not the absence of activity, but the alignment of desire with reality. The modern person often confuses stimulation with meaning. Constant activity creates the illusion of progress, while hollowing out presence. The Stoic rejects this addiction to movement. They do not need constant novelty to feel alive. They find meaning in depth, not in variety. One good book read deeply is worth more than 100 skimmed. One honest conversation outweighs 100 empty exchanges. The Stoic lives by quality, not quantity. In that economy of depth lies the secret of ease. Every simplification is a return to essence. The person who learns to live with less returns to a state of order that nature itself demonstrates. Nature wastes nothing. It moves with economy, precision, and balance. The Stoic mirrors this. They align their habits with necessity, their possessions with function, their goals with virtue. When life matches the simplicity of nature, tension fades. The world becomes cooperative rather than chaotic. To simplify wants also means to detach from reputation, the need to be seen, to be admired, to be known. These are subtle chains that bind the modern mind. The Stoic does not measure worth through visibility. They live by alignment, not applause. Public validation is unstable currency. Inner consistency is permanent wealth. When the need to impress fades, authenticity returns. When the need to compete dissolves, freedom begins. A cluttered mind cannot perceive truth. Desire clouds perception. Every craving distorts the view of what is. The Stoic cultivate stillness to see clearly. They know that simplicity of want produces accuracy of thought. When the noise of wanting subsides, the signal of wisdom emerges. From this clarity flows better judgment, cleaner action, and deeper peace. Complexity dissolves where clarity resides. To make life easier this year, one must reduce internal consumption as much as external. Audit the habits that drain presence, pointless scrolling, shallow comparison, endless goals. Every simplification restores fragments of energy lost to distraction. The Stoic treats attention as currency and spends it only on what enriches life. Ease comes when attention and intention align. The result is a day unburdened by excess and a mind unclouded by desire. Socrates said, "He who is not contented with what he has would not be contented with what he would like to have." This is the law of simplicity. Satisfaction is not postponed to a future acquisition. It is practiced in the present. The one who lives this way cannot be manipulated by trends, cannot be shaken by loss, cannot be drained by excess. They have mastered the art of enough, and in doing so, they have mastered ease. Simplicity is elegance in practice. It is the clean design of a disciplined life. It removes what weakens focus and preserves what strengthens character. It is an active act of refinement, repeated daily, where one asks, "Does this serve my peace? Does this sharpen my purpose?" The fewer the yeses, the clearer the life. This clarity is the foundation of freedom, the freedom to live by choice rather than compulsion. To simplify wants is to honor the finite nature of existence. Every unnecessary desire wastes time that cannot be recovered. Every distraction steals the present. The Stoic lives with an awareness of mortality, which sharpens the will to live cleanly. They strip life of non-essentials to make room for meaning. The person who learns this principle no longer measures life by quantity of experience, but by quality of awareness. In simplicity lies mastery. The one who learns to reduce, to declutter, to detach, rises above the confusion of the world. The mind becomes lighter, the day becomes clearer, and the will becomes sovereign. This is how life becomes easier, not through adding comfort, but through removing excess. The Stoic lives by this discipline, and through it, they discover the quiet wealth that no possession can provide. Peace in the presence of less. Chapter 3. Know your purpose. A life without direction multiplies difficulty. When the Stoics spoke of peace, they did not mean passivity. They meant alignment, the state where purpose and action move as one. The person who knows why they live no longer fights confusion each morning. They wake with order, because purpose has chosen what deserves energy. Socrates asked questions not to display knowledge, but to awaken clarity in others. He believed that the unexamined life was not worth living. To know one's purpose is to examine one's life until its direction becomes inevitable. Epictetus taught that every person is an actor on a stage not of their choosing. One cannot control the script, but one can control how to play the part. The Stoic does not wish for another role. They study their own, understand its duties, and perform it with dignity. Purpose is the comprehension of that role, the recognition that existence has been given to express a principle, not to chase every opportunity. The person who knows their purpose lives with fewer contradictions and wastes less strength on decisions that do not serve their direction. Modern life rewards activity without clarity. Productivity has replaced purpose, and movement has replaced meaning. The Stoic reverses this. They act only where action fulfills intention. They know that busyness without alignment is exhaustion disguised as achievement. To know one's purpose is to filter every task, every relationship, and every pursuit through one question. Does this serve my reason for being? Simplicity of aim transforms chaos into structure. A clear why turns life into a straight line instead of a maze. The search for purpose begins with values. Goals change with seasons. Values endure across them. The Stoic defines what they stand for: integrity, courage, reason, restraint, contribution, and then lets those values dictate goals, not the reverse. Purpose is not found. It is built through consistent alignment with principle. When one knows what they stand for, decisions simplify, conflict dissolves. The mind becomes a compass pointing always toward the same truth. Socrates believed that knowledge of the self is the highest wisdom. To know one's purpose, one must first know one's nature. The Stoic studies their own tendencies as a general studies terrain, the strengths, the weaknesses, the patterns of thought that repeat. Without self-knowledge, purpose becomes imitation. To imitate is to drift. To know oneself is to act from origin, not from influence. The person who acts from origin is immune to confusion because their standard is internal, not external. Purpose anchors discipline. Without it, even virtue drifts into abstraction. Epictetus wrote that every action should answer the question, what is it for? This inquiry refines behavior into coherence. The Stoic acts with reason, not impulse, because reason remembers direction. To live without purpose is to scatter energy across the trivial. To live with purpose is to gather it toward meaning. This gathering creates momentum. The person with purpose is calm not because life is easy, but because their path is clear. The world glorifies choice, but drowns in indecision. The Stoic does not worship options, they choose alignment. Every path not aligned with purpose is a quiet theft of energy. To make life easier this year, one must stop chasing every possibility and start cultivating one direction. The mind finds rest when it no longer negotiates between infinite alternatives. Commitment brings ease because choice has been made once, not daily. Purpose eliminates the noise of uncertainty. Meaning stabilizes emotion. When purpose governs life, frustration loses weight. The Stoic sees obstacles as part of their appointed path. Difficulty becomes training, not tragedy. Purpose gives suffering context, and context transforms pain into preparation. The person who knows their why can endure almost any how. They accept hardship as necessity, not injustice. Peace emerges naturally when events are viewed as instruments of purpose, not interruptions to it. Modern people often confuse goals with purpose. Goals are destinations. Purpose is direction. The person who lives for goals alone finds temporary satisfaction followed by emptiness. The Stoic lives for direction. They understand that meaning is not achieved once, but sustained through every act that expresses principle. A goal achieved without purpose feels hollow. A purpose lived without reward feels complete. To live purposefully is to remove the need for constant external validation. Productivity is often a disguise for avoidance. Many fill their days with tasks to escape the discomfort of reflection. The Stoic confronts this. They pause to examine the purpose behind each effort. Is the action aligned, or is it distraction? Activity becomes ease only when it moves in the direction of meaning. Otherwise, every effort deepens fatigue. The person who knows their purpose finds rest even in labor, because every movement has context. Their effort becomes devotion, not depletion. Purpose clarifies relationships. When one knows their direction, they no longer attach to those who pull them away from it. The Stoic measures companionship by alignment, not convenience. They seek those who share principle, not preference. Many friendships fail because they are built on mutual distraction rather than mutual elevation. When purpose guides connection, relationships become simpler, fewer, deeper, cleaner. Complexity fades when alignment replaces dependency. To know purpose is to know what to say no to. Each refusal protects direction. The Stoic declines what does not serve their path without resentment or guilt. They understand that every yes carries a cost. The modern mind clutters itself with commitments that dilute energy. To make life easier, one must cultivate the strength to refuse the unnecessary. The art of saying no is not rejection, it is preservation of focus. The fewer directions one moves in, the farther one travels. Socrates lived by a question. What is the good life? He did not chase wealth or power, because neither answered that question. The Stoic asks the same each day. They examine whether their actions align with their definition of the good. This daily reflection refines purpose into permanence. Purpose is not declared once, it is maintained through examination. The examined life is simple because it knows where it stands, what it values and why it acts. Purpose transforms perception of time. When life lacks meaning, time feels heavy. Days drag because they drift. When purpose fills the hours, time accelerates. The Stoic does not count days by quantity, but by quality of alignment. Each day lived according to purpose adds to eternity, as Marcus Aurelius said. The person who knows their purpose no longer fears wasted years because they live each moment deliberately. The modern chase for productivity often hides the absence of meaning. People measure worth by output instead of alignment. The Stoic sees through this illusion. Productivity is valuable only when it serves purpose. Otherwise, it becomes motion without meaning. To know one's purpose is to reverse the hierarchy, to let meaning dictate production, not production dictate meaning. This inversion brings balance. Work becomes cleaner, rest becomes guiltless, and life becomes coherent. Purpose requires silence. In the noise of opinion, the voice of direction is drowned. The Stoic withdraws regularly to hear the inner guide clearly. They reflect, write, or walk in solitude to remember what they stand for. Without this quiet recalibration, even the disciplined drift. The mind, like a compass, must be reset to true north. In solitude, the Stoic reaffirms values and returns to action with precision. This rhythm of reflection and execution sustains clarity through chaos. Purpose also organizes emotion. Anger, envy, and fear arise when attention fixates on what lies outside meaning. The Stoic views these emotions as indicators of misalignment. They ask, does this serve my purpose? If not, they release it. Purpose functions as emotional order, a ruler that measures what deserves energy. Through this lens, emotional control becomes natural. The person who knows their why no longer wastes reaction on what does not contribute to it. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." This is purpose in practice. It begins with definition and ends with discipline. The Stoic defines their ideal self, their guiding principle, their moral aim. Then they act consistently toward it without confusion or hesitation. Life simplifies because every decision either aligns or does not. This binary clarity removes complexity from the day. The person who knows who they wish to be no longer negotiates with distraction. Purpose gives life a hierarchy. Without it, every task competes for attention equally. The Stoic ranks responsibilities by meaning. What serves virtue comes first. What serves ego dissolves. What serves noise is ignored. This order creates inner calm. The world outside may remain chaotic, but inside, the structure is firm. The Stoic lives by design, not drift. Ease flows from that internal architecture of meaning. To make life easier this year, define what your existence serves. Is it wisdom, excellence, contribution, or peace? The answer becomes the anchor for all choices. Write it, remember it, and return to it when life pulls in different directions. The world will always offer new distractions, but purpose remains immovable. The one who knows their why is never lost, even when the path changes. They carry their direction within, unshaken by external confusion. Purpose is not found through wishful thought. It is revealed through consistent reflection and disciplined living. It grows clearer each time action aligns with value. The Stoic builds meaning daily, like a craftsman shaping marble, removing what is unnecessary to reveal what already exists beneath. When purpose becomes visible, ease follows naturally. Every effort, every hardship, every victory fits into a coherent design. The result is a life of quiet strength, simple, deliberate, and profoundly free. Chapter 4. Build resilience. Through challenge. Ease is not created by avoiding hardship. It is created by mastering the relationship with it. The Stoics saw challenge as the forge of the soul, the place where strength is shaped and character becomes visible. Seneca wrote that adversity is the training ground of virtue, not the enemy of peace. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that every obstacle is material for the mind. When the Stoic faces discomfort, they do not curse fate. They study it, use it, and rise through it. In this discipline, life becomes easier because resistance no longer feels hostile. It becomes familiar terrain. Discomfort is not punishment, it is preparation. The modern mind avoids it through convenience, distraction, and comfort. Yet comfort without contrast weakens resolve. The Stoic understands that ease is earned through endurance. The muscle of resilience grows only when stretched. Every difficulty becomes an exercise, every inconvenience a chance to refine patience and composure. To make life easier, one must stop expecting it to be easy. When hardship becomes training instead of tragedy, peace remains unbroken. Seneca wrote that the person who fears hardship will never be free. Freedom is not granted by circumstance, but by strength of endurance. The Stoic learns to welcome the difficult as an ally that reveals potential. When life tests them, they meet it as an athlete meets resistance, not with resentment, but with readiness. Each trial becomes a mirror, reflecting how far they have advanced. To live this way transforms chaos into discipline. Every setback becomes an assignment in self-mastery. Marcus Aurelius often wrote to himself about the inevitability of difficulty. He did not ask for an easier life, he asked for a stronger mind. That distinction is the foundation of resilience. The Stoic does not wait for external calm to find peace. They build calm through confrontation. They rehearse adversity mentally through the practice of premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of misfortune, so that nothing surprises them. When it arrives, they greet it as expected. Preparedness dissolves panic. A life lived in readiness feels lighter than one lived in fear. Modern society hides hardship behind convenience. Technology solves discomfort, but also weakens tolerance. The Stoic trains to remain human in an age that avoids strain. They seek discomfort deliberately, cold, silence, solitude, challenge, to stay sharp and disciplined. This is not masochism, but maintenance. Resilience is not born from comfort. It is built through contact with reality. Ease follows not from escape, but from exposure. The more often one faces discomfort voluntarily, the less power it holds when it comes uninvited. To build resilience is to strengthen perception. The Stoic examines events objectively, separating opinion from fact. When misfortune occurs, they strip it of exaggeration. Difficulty becomes neutral, something to be handled rather than feared. This mental clarity is armor. The Stoic does not dramatize, they analyze. By removing emotional distortion, they conserve energy for action. Life becomes easier because the mind no longer multiplies suffering through imagination. Seneca taught that prosperity teaches nothing. Adversity teaches everything. Ease without challenge dulls the mind, while friction awakens it. The Stoic views life as a series of lessons disguised as obstacles. Each difficulty refines discipline, patience, and humility. Without these tests, virtue remains theory. The one who avoids discomfort, avoids difficulty willingly, is to accelerate strength. Life simplifies when every hardship is seen as part of the curriculum of improvement. The body and the mind follow the same law. Both grow through resistance. The Stoic applies this law consciously. They practice endurance in small ways, rising early, tolerating cold, fasting, remaining silent when provoked. Each act of self-restraint becomes a rehearsal for larger trials. These micro-disciplines fortify the mind. They build the inner certainty that one can endure. When real adversity arrives, the Stoic is already trained. Preparation turns chaos into choreography. Marcus Aurelius wrote that what stands in the way becomes the way. He meant that every obstacle carries the blueprint of advancement. The Stoic does not merely survive challenge, they use it to ascend. Every resistance encountered clarifies purpose. Every pain endured refines focus. Life becomes easier because hardship no longer feels like interruption. It becomes integrated into the rhythm of progress, a natural part of development, expected and respected. To see discomfort as training requires perspective. The Stoic shifts from the language of punishment to the language of opportunity. When loss comes, it trains detachment. When insult comes, it trains composure. When uncertainty arrives, it trains patience. This transformation of meaning changes everything. Events stop being enemies. They become instruments. The Stoic lives at peace not because life is soft, but because meaning makes it bearable. Modern people spend enormous energy avoiding struggle. They redesign their lives around convenience, forgetting that every layer of comfort removes one layer of capability. The Stoic reverses this decline by embracing deliberate hardship. They choose friction to stay functional. They train discomfort like an athlete trains the body, to prevent weakness before it begins. Life becomes easier, not because conditions improve, but because the individual becomes stronger than conditions. Resilience is the most practical form of peace. It does not depend on quiet surroundings or ideal circumstances. It lives within the individual as composure under pressure. Seneca said that the fire tests gold, and adversity tests the brave. The Stoic invites this testing because they know it exposes truth. Every difficulty reveals the state of one's preparation. Failure is feedback. Fear is information. Pain is the tuition of growth. Those who pay it willingly graduate into mastery. To build resilience through challenge is to change one's relationship with struggle. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" the Stoic asks, "What can I train from this?" The question redirects emotion into motion. It transforms helplessness into focus. When faced with insult, they train patience. When faced with loss, they train detachment. When faced with chaos, they train order. Every event becomes a gymnasium for the mind. This perspective makes hardship purposeful, and life less burdensome. The Stoic accepts discomfort as a teacher. They understand that the mind grows quiet when it stops arguing with reality. Resistance to what is only multiplies pain. Acceptance converts pain into progress. This is the alchemy of resilience, turning difficulty into discipline. The one who learns this no longer fears the unknown. They see challenge as repetition of a familiar drill. Control what can be controlled, endure what must be endured, and remain calm throughout. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that life would bring difficulty, conflict, and loss. He wrote those reminders not as pessimism, but as preparation. By anticipating difficulty, he reduced its shock. The Stoic does not pretend life is fair. They prepare to meet it fairly. This posture makes life easier because expectation matches reality. Disappointment fades when hardship is expected. Peace grows when nothing surprises the mind trained for trial. The modern illusion of perpetual comfort creates fragility. When ease is interrupted, panic arises. The Stoic avoids this fragility through exposure. They practice voluntary discomfort, simpler food, colder environments, solitude, silence, to remind themselves that peace does not depend on luxury. The less one requires to remain composed, the easier life becomes. The Stoic finds contentment in the essentials and resilience in the absence of excess. Seneca wrote that difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body. The modern world separates physical and mental endurance, yet both obey the same principle. The person who refuses all strain loses capacity. The one who accepts strain expands it. Resilience is built gradually, through friction repeated, until familiarity replaces fear. When difficulty ceases to shock, peace begins to settle. Life simplifies when the unexpected no longer feels catastrophic. Resilience requires memory. The Stoic recalls past hardships survived. Each memory becomes evidence that future ones will also be endured. This reflection builds confidence not in outcomes, but in the self. The Stoic knows they have withstood worse and thus can withstand again. This remembrance transforms fear into perspective. Every past trial becomes a foundation for current calm. Ease emerges not from forgetting pain, but from remembering survival. To make life easier this year, one must deliberately practice endurance. Begin small, tolerate boredom without reaching for distraction, finish tasks despite fatigue, hold silence when provoked. Each act builds tolerance for discomfort. These small victories compound into resilience. Eventually, the storms of life that once caused collapse now pass without disturbance. The world remains turbulent, but the Stoic remains unmoved. Resilience also requires restraint. The person who reacts to every discomfort multiplies suffering. The Stoic practices pause, the moment between stimulus and response. In that pause, reason gains control. Through reason, difficulty becomes manageable. Every challenge presents two paths, reaction or response. Reaction belongs to impulse, response belongs to choice. The Stoic chooses the latter. This single discipline converts chaos into composure and confusion into order. Marcus Aurelius observed that nothing happens to anyone that they are not fitted by nature to bear. This belief eliminates despair. The Stoic trusts their capacity to endure. Life becomes easier when one stops labeling experiences as unbearable. Everything can be carried if carried correctly, with discipline, acceptance, and focus. The load feels lighter when lifted with right posture. Resilience is that posture of the soul. The Stoic does not glorify pain, they use it. Suffering without reflection is waste. Suffering examined becomes wisdom. Every trial leaves behind instruction for the next. The disciplined mind harvests lessons from every hardship and become stronger because of them. Over time, this accumulation of endurance becomes character. Character, once hardened, makes existence smoother because fewer events disturb equilibrium. Resilience also means adaptability. The Stoic is flexible without losing principle. They bend to circumstance, but never break their core. They understand that life changes constantly, and rigidity breeds fracture. The mind trained in Stoic discipline adapts swiftly, responding to events as they come without complaint. This adaptability removes friction. The adaptable endure more, resist less, and live easier. To build resilience is to stop expecting rest from the world and start generating it within. The Stoic does not rely on calm conditions. They carry calm with them. Whether in success or struggle, they remain composed. This constancy makes life predictable, even in chaos. The person who maintains internal order amidst external disorder has already won the hardest battle, the battle of response. Seneca wrote that misfortune is virtue's opportunity. The Stoic lives by that law. They treat hardship as a stage to demonstrate principle. When insulted, they demonstrate patience. When betrayed, they demonstrate integrity. When pressured, they demonstrate control. Life becomes easier because hardship becomes purpose in disguise. Every challenge confirms what the Stoic values most: the strength to stay aligned when the world shifts. To live with resilience is to refuse fragility. The Stoic does not wish for safety, they wish for strength. They understand that life will test every virtue they claim. They meet those tests with preparation, composure, and endurance. In doing so, they transform adversity from burden to advantage. This transformation is the essence of Stoic peace, a calm earned through challenge, a simplicity built on strength, a life made easier because it no longer fears the difficult. Chapter 5. Shift perspective to gratitude. Ease does not come from accumulation, it comes from appreciation. The Stoics understood that contentment is not the result of what one has, but how one sees. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself each morning to be grateful for the chance to wake, to think, to act, to serve. Epicurus taught that the simplest things, bread, water, friendship, can bring the highest pleasure when one's mind is tuned to gratitude. To shift perspective is to change the atmosphere of life without changing its structure. What was once seen as insufficient becomes enough. What once felt ordinary becomes sacred. Gratitude is the art of perception. The world does not grow lighter, the gaze grows clearer. Most unhappiness begins in blindness to fortune. The modern person stands surrounded by abundance and complains of lack because comparison has replaced awareness. The Stoic corrects this blindness through deliberate gratitude. They train the eye to see blessings before burdens. When gratitude becomes habitual, frustration dissolves. The mind reorders itself from deficit to sufficiency, from restlessness to stillness. Epicurus wrote that the wealth of nature is limited and easy to acquire, while the wealth of opinion is boundless and never satisfied. The Stoic aligns with nature, not opinion. They understand that the essentials are already present: shelter, food, thought, and time. Every additional desire complicates peace. Gratitude recenters life around essentials, stripping away the excess demands that create discontent. The person who cultivates this perspective moves through each day lighter, free from the weight of unnecessary wanting. Marcus Aurelius practiced gratitude as philosophy, not sentiment. In his writings, he lists the people who shaped him, his mentors, parents, teachers, soldiers, acknowledging the gifts of their influence. This recognition grounded him in humility and reminded him that no one thrives alone. Gratitude, for the Stoic, is a stabilizing force to what endures rather than what fluctuates. The grateful mind does not chase novelty, it cherishes continuity. Modern dissatisfaction grows from constant exposure to comparison. Social media amplifies envy and normalizes dissatisfaction. The Stoic filters this by returning to direct experience. They shift attention from what others possess to what is already within reach. Gratitude interrupts the cycle of comparison. It rewires perception, transforming scarcity into sufficiency. The person who practices gratitude does not measure their life by others, but by the depth of their own presence. Gratitude is discipline, not decoration. It requires effort to remember what is working when surrounded by what is not. The Stoic makes this remembrance a daily ritual, to notice health, relationships, and opportunities before complaint can speak. This repetition shapes the nervous system toward calm. Each act of appreciation interrupts the reflex of dissatisfaction. Over time, the mind begins to default toward peace instead of irritation. Ease becomes a natural response because gratitude has become the internal setting. Epicurus reminded his followers that pleasure is found in the absence of pain, not in the pursuit of luxury. Gratitude functions the same way. It is the awareness of absence, the absence of suffering, hunger, loneliness, or chaos in this moment. To acknowledge these absences is to awaken to silent blessings. The Stoic finds gratitude in stability, in simplicity, in survival. They thank existence for normalcy, knowing that normalcy is fragile. This awareness deepens serenity. The ungrateful mind is restless. It hunts endlessly for what is missing. The grateful mind rests in what is already here. This difference defines the quality of living. To make life easier this year, one must stop chasing the extraordinary and start appreciating the ordinary. Every meal, every conversation, every quiet hour is enough material for peace when viewed with gratitude. Simplicity becomes luxury when seen through thankful eyes. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to think, to enjoy, to love." These are not poetic words, they are practical commands. The Stoic begins the day in recognition, not expectation. Before demands accumulate, they anchor their mind in gratitude. This sets the emotional tone for the day. Challenges still come, but perception remains grounded in appreciation rather than resentment. Gratitude inoculates the mind against daily agitation. Gratitude transforms complaint into comprehension. When life delivers difficulty, the Stoic asks, what remains unbroken? What still functions? What can still be done? This redirection shifts focus from loss to resource. Even in misfortune, gratitude finds something intact: courage, time, will, endurance. This discovery prevents despair. The person who can still find reason to thank does not fall completely into darkness. Gratitude becomes the last light that never extinguishes. Epicurus said that if you wish to be rich, count the things you already have that money cannot buy. This is not metaphor, but arithmetic. The person who counts possessions will always find shortage. The one who counts blessings will always find abundance. The Stoic measures life by inner wealth, character, wisdom, and presence. The more they count these, the easier life feels, for wealth becomes portable, independent of circumstance. The modern world trains the mind to overlook stability. People assume the functioning of the body, the loyalty of friends, the safety of home. Gratitude reverses that blindness. It restores sight to the taken for granted. The Stoic makes a daily inventory of fortune, health today, food today, the ability to breathe, to move, to think. Each acknowledgement renews appreciation and prevents the slow decay of entitlement. Ease is preserved when expectation does not erode awareness. Gratitude simplifies emotion. It interrupts envy, resentment and greed before they mature. The mind cannot hold gratitude and grievance simultaneously. The Stoic uses gratitude strategically to clear emotional clutter. When anger arises, they recall what remains good. When sadness surfaces, they remember what persists. This reorientation restores balance. Emotional regulation becomes simpler because the perspective has been reset to abundance. Gratitude also trains humility. The Stoic recognizes that much of life's good fortune was given, not earned. Health, opportunity, companionship, these are gifts, not guarantees. Awareness of this fact prevents arrogance. It keeps success from inflating the ego. The grateful person remains grounded because they understand dependence on forces beyond control. This humility preserves peace by eliminating entitlement. When nothing is owed, everything received feels generous. To practice gratitude is to practice realism. It is not ignoring what is wrong, but remembering what is right. The Stoic does not deny pain, but they balance it with perspective. For every hardship, there remains an element of fortune, the strength to bear it, the wisdom to learn from it, or the time to recover. Gratitude does not erase suffering. It reframes it within a larger context of life that still holds beauty. That frame lightens the burden. Epicurus saw contentment as self-sufficiency, a mind satisfied with little, untouched by craving. The Stoic continues that discipline by anchoring joy in what cannot be taken. They practice gratitude for their capacity to think rightly, to act justly, to endure calmly. When gratitude centers on internal virtues rather than external rewards, stability follows. Life becomes easier because serenity is no longer vulnerable to loss. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself to be thankful even for obstacles, for they provided opportunities to practice patience and wisdom. Gratitude for challenge converts adversity into training. Every obstacle becomes a teacher. The Stoic thanks fate not because hardship feels good, but because it reveals what is strong. This reversal of attitude transforms frustration into fuel. The mind that can thank difficulty has already mastered peace. Gratitude extends beyond possessions and events. It reaches into time itself. The Stoic treats each moment as borrowed, and each experience as a gift. They know that nothing is permanent, not even the present breath. This awareness sharpens attention. It turns ordinary experience into wonder. Gratitude makes time sacred by reminding the mind that this moment will not return. The person who lives with this awareness cannot live carelessly. To make life easier this year, gratitude must become a practice, not a reaction. It begins intentionally, writing 3 things at dawn, naming one fortune before rest. These small acts reshape perspective over time. The mind trained in gratitude no longer waits for conditions to improve. It finds improvement in perception itself. Every day becomes bearable because gratitude keeps the focus on what remains functional and sufficient. Gratitude protects against the fatigue of striving. Modern ambition often forgets to celebrate progress. The Stoic pauses to acknowledge steps taken before chasing the next. This pause restores motivation and prevents burnout. A grateful worker performs better than a restless one because they draw energy from appreciation, not pressure. The grateful mind endures longer, creates cleaner, and lives calmer. To shift perspective toward gratitude is to regain command over emotional weather. The ungrateful mind suffers storms it creates. The grateful mind clears skies through attention. The Stoic maintains this weather control by choosing awareness. They cannot always control events, but they can control the direction of thought. Gratitude is that direction, upward, stabilizing, luminous. Life feels lighter when the gaze looks toward what endures instead of what is absent. Epicurus and Marcus Aurelius agreed that contentment is a mindset. Gratitude is the mechanism that constructs it. Each act of appreciation builds internal order. Each recognition of fortune strengthens equilibrium. The more one practices, the more natural it becomes to see the good in all things. Life remains imperfect, but perspective transforms imperfection into instruction. The grateful person moves through the same world as others, but experiences it differently, calmer, lighter, more at ease. Gratitude is the simplest path to peace because it requires no change in circumstance, only a change in sight. To shift perception is to alter experience entirely. The Stoic knows this and trains the gaze daily. They look for what is working, what is beautiful, what endures. In doing so, they transform life from burden to blessing. The result is ease. A stillness born not of possession, but of perception. The quiet strength that comes from knowing enough has always been here. Chapter 6. Strengthen your community. Ease grows in the company of others. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that human beings are made for cooperation, like hands, like feet, like eyelids. To live against this truth is to suffer needlessly. The Stoic recognizes that solitude has its purpose for reflection, but not as a permanent condition. Strength, wisdom, and peace mature through interaction. To strengthen community is to align with nature, for humanity was designed to thrive in connection, not isolation. Modern life has made proximity effortless, but connection difficult. Technology has replaced presence with access, conversation with commentary, and companionship with consumption. The Stoic navigates this distortion carefully. They use tools without being used by them. Digital life must serve real life, not consume it. The person who surrounds themselves with genuine relationships builds a structure of support that lightens existence. When life becomes heavy, shared strength divides the burden. Marcus Aurelius often wrote of the interdependence of all things. He saw humanity as threads woven into one fabric of purpose. To tear from that fabric is to lose meaning. The Stoic strengthens their community by living as an example of stability and reason. They contribute clarity instead of chaos, service instead of self-absorption. Community does not demand uniformity, it demands unity in principle. The more one gives value, the more one strengthens the web that sustains ease. Humans are social by nature, and isolation contradicts that nature. The Stoic understands that independence does not mean detachment. True independence is the ability to contribute freely, not to withdraw completely. The person who contributes meaningfully experiences peace through belonging. Community does not weaken individuality, it refines it. Within shared purpose, ability to contribute freely, not to withdraw completely. The person who contributes meaningfully experiences peace through belonging. Community does not weaken individuality, it refines it. Within shared purpose, the Stoic finds direction. Within service, they find ease. Modern loneliness is not the absence of people, but the absence of depth. Endless communication lacks substance when stripped of sincerity. The Stoic cultivates depth deliberately. They listen with attention, speak with honesty, and invest presence instead of performance. Each genuine exchange becomes nourishment for both sides. When connection is real, the noise of life fades. Human warmth simplifies existence in ways no material comfort can replicate. Marcus Aurelius ruled the most powerful empire in the world, yet wrote constantly about humility and kindness. He saw every person as a partner in the cosmic order, deserving of patience and understanding. This Stoic compassion was not weakness, it was recognition of shared humanity. The person who practices compassion strengthens the world around them. By softening judgment, they reduce conflict. By practicing understanding, they create peace. This is how ease expands outward, through the discipline of empathy. The Stoic approaches relationships with the same balance they apply to the self. They neither cling nor neglect. They give without expecting, help without demand, and forgive without calculation. Such equilibrium sustains community. It replaces tension with trust. The person who maintains this balance becomes an anchor in others' storms. To be that anchor is one of life's highest contributions. Ease multiplies when peace is shared. Community is built not through numbers, but through integrity. The Stoic keeps promises, honors time, and respects words. They become reliable in a culture of inconsistency. Reliability breeds safety, and safety breeds connection. The ease of belonging begins with trust. Each person who embodies it strengthens the collective peace. To make life easier this year, strengthen your community by becoming someone others can depend on. The Stoics see service as philosophy in action. Marcus Aurelius viewed leadership as duty, not privilege. Every act that benefits another strengthens the world and the self simultaneously. Helping others is not an interruption of Stoic calm. It is an extension of it. When one contributes to the welfare of others, inner harmony grows. The paradox of service is that giving lightens the giver first. Ease begins when energy moves outward instead of being trapped in self-concern. Digital life rewards attention to self, followers, likes, validation, but drains connection of sincerity. The Stoic reverses this focus. They engage with others as humans, not as profiles. They exchange presence, not performance. A single meaningful conversation outweighs 1,000 empty notifications. Real community exists offline, in silence shared, in effort given, in care extended. Technology can broadcast noise. Only presence can transmit peace. The Stoic community is not based on agreement, but on virtue. Disagreement does not break connection. Disrespect does. The wise person practices patience with difference, knowing that every mind follows its own path. Marcus Aurelius often wrote reminders to himself to remain calm when others acted foolishly, to respond with reason rather than reaction. This restraint preserves harmony. The community that practices restraint remains stable even under tension. To strengthen community is also to accept imperfection. People fail, misunderstand, and disappoint. The Stoic expects this as part of the human condition. They forgive easily, not because others deserve it, but because resentment complicates life. Forgiveness simplifies. It removes unnecessary weight. Each act of letting go makes the community cleaner, lighter, and stronger. Ease expands where grudges end. The Stoic finds that connection nourishes discipline. Isolation amplifies ego and distorts perception. Companionship corrects perspective. Through others, one sees oneself clearly. Feedback refines behavior, and accountability sustains virtue. The person surrounded by principled companions improves more steadily than the one alone. A strong community becomes a mirror that keeps the Stoic aligned. Ease grows where self-deception fades. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that people act out of ignorance, not malice. Understanding this truth removes hostility. The Stoic practices compassion without expectation of return. This attitude disarms conflict before it begins. Compassion is the quiet force that stabilizes human interaction. The more it circulates, the smoother the world functions. Gratitude, service, and patience combine to make life easier, not only for the self, but for all. Community is not built through grand gestures, but through consistency, checking on others, offering guidance, sharing time. These small acts accumulate into strength. The Stoic contributes without seeking recognition. They understand that true influence operates silently. Each act of kindness, unseen or forgotten, strengthens the invisible fabric of society. The easier life feels, the more one has quietly supported the ease of others. The Stoic does not isolate their peace. They distribute it. A calm mind influences those nearby. A disciplined presence steadies environments. The one who has trained themselves becomes a stabilizing force for others still struggling. This is the essence of Stoic leadership, to embody peace so clearly that it becomes contagious. The more peace is shared, the less conflict remains. The community becomes an echo of discipline. Marcus Aurelius considered humanity as parts of a single organism. To harm another was to harm oneself. To help another was to strengthen the whole. This perspective simplifies behavior. Decisions no longer require constant moral debate. What benefits the collective benefits the self. The Stoic sees cooperation as the logical path to ease. Competition without principle breeds chaos. Collaboration grounded in virtue creates harmony. Modern disconnection often masquerades as independence. The Stoic rejects this illusion. They know that to thrive alone is rare and temporary. Even the strongest depend on others' labor, wisdom, and presence. Recognizing this truth cultivates humility. The grateful mind sees community not as burden, but as blessing. Each interaction becomes a reminder of interdependence, a quiet gratitude for belonging to something larger than the self. To strengthen community, the Stoic practices clarity in communication. They speak honestly and listen fully. Misunderstanding is the root of unnecessary conflict. Clear language preserves peace. The Stoic avoids gossip and complaint. They replace them with reason and empathy. Each conversation becomes an opportunity to calm rather than inflame. When speech serves truth, connection strengthens. When connection strengthens, life becomes easier. The Stoic also recognizes that community must include solitude. Connection requires balance. Time alone refines thought. Time together applies it. The person who never withdraws becomes reactive. The one who always withdraws becomes detached. Balance between solitude and fellowship maintains clarity. The Stoic alternates between reflection and engagement like breath, inward for understanding, outward for contribution. To make life easier this year, one must restore human contact to its natural depth. Schedule conversations that matter. Meet face to face when possible. Write with sincerity. Help quietly. Support without seeking attention. Every act of presence strengthens the collective atmosphere of calm. Ease spreads through networks of integrity. A society built on Stoic principles becomes lighter because it wastes less energy on conflict and pretense. The strength of a community mirrors the strength of its individuals. The Stoic improves themselves not for isolation, but for contribution. Each personal victory adds resilience to the whole. When individuals act with virtue, the group becomes stable. When the group becomes stable, life becomes easier for everyone within it. This upward cycle begins with one disciplined person practicing compassion consistently. Marcus Aurelius taught that the soul grows in proportion to the acts of kindness it performs. The more one contributes to others, the broader and calmer the spirit becomes. The Stoic measures success, not by control over others, but by harmony created among them. This harmony is the purest form of peace. It transforms communities into sanctuaries of reason, where strength and gentleness coexist. To strengthen community is to align with the fundamental Stoic principle that virtue serves the whole. No one ascends alone. Every act of wisdom shared, every burden lifted, every lesson passed on multiplies stability. The Stoic lives as part of a chain, receiving wisdom from those before, giving it to those ahead. Life becomes easier when one stops striving for solitary triumph and begins building collective balance. Ease grows naturally where compassion governs conduct. The Stoic practices this compassion as discipline. They extend patience where others rush, understanding where others judge, calm where others react. This steady posture turns relationships into sources of strength rather than conflict. The one who lives this way becomes a quiet center of gravity in a chaotic world, the living proof that ease expands when humanity unites under principle. Chapter 7. Stay present and mindful. Ease exists only in the present. The Stoics understood that anxiety belongs to the future and regret belongs to the past, but peace belongs to now. Heraclitus wrote that all things flow, that one cannot step into the same river twice, because both the person and the river have changed. Marcus Aurelius echoed this by reminding himself that life is only this moment, what is before the mind right now. To live anywhere else is to live in illusion. The discipline of presence is the foundation of simplicity. Modern life fractures attention. Devices, notifications, and constant stimuli scatter the mind into fragments. The Stoic seeks to gather those fragments back into unity. They know that every moment split between past and future is a moment lost to living. The practice of attention restores control. To be mindful is to be whole again, to inhabit fully the task, the breath, the conversation, the act before you. The mind anchored in the present cannot be overwhelmed by what has not yet arrived. Heraclitus saw change as the nature of reality. To resist change is to resist life itself. The Stoic learns to remain steady while everything moves. Presence is not about freezing time. It is about moving with time consciously. The person one stops wishing it to stand still. Marcus Aurelius trained his thoughts each morning to focus on what could be done today, not on what had been lost or what might come. He wrote that the present is sufficient if the mind acts rightly within it. That truth remains unchanged. The Stoic simplifies their world by reducing their field of concern to what stands immediately before them. They do what is theirs to do now. Tomorrow will belong to tomorrow. This division restores calm through structure. Distraction is the modern disease of the mind. The Stoic treats it with awareness. They observe the impulse to drift, to check, to wander. They bring the mind back without judgment. Each return strengthens focus. This repetition is training, mental push-ups against the weight of noise. The one who learns to hold attention discovers hidden freedom, the ability to choose where life unfolds. To master attention is to master experience itself. Heraclitus taught that the hidden harmony of the world is found in constant tension. The Stoic understands this paradox within attention. Presence requires effort. The mind will resist stillness, will crave movement. Yet, within that resistance lies harmony, the sharpening of awareness through discipline. To remain present amidst chaos is the highest form of order. Life becomes easier not because it quiets, but because the mind becomes strong enough to stay still inside it. Marcus Aurelius viewed mindfulness as moral duty. He wrote that the mind must remain aware of its actions, aware of its principles, aware of the briefness of life. Presence is not indulgence, it is respect for existence. Each moment ignored is a small act of waste. The Stoic honors life by attending to it completely. In attention lies reverence. To live distracted is to live carelessly. To live mindfully is to live deliberately. The present moment carries everything needed for peace. The Stoic does not postpone calm to the future or relocate it in memory. They understand that life always happens now, breath by breath, decision by decision. When one ceases to chase time, time ceases to chase back. Stillness replaces restlessness. The person anchored in presence does not rush. They move efficiently, aware, precise. Efficiency born from mindfulness removes wasted motion and mental clutter. The modern person often confuses movement with progress. They fill silence with sound, time with tasks, and space with distraction. The Stoic practices the opposite, doing one thing at a time with full presence. In conversation, they listen completely. In work, they focus entirely. In rest, they rest fully. This discipline brings back quality. What is done with attention requires less repetition, less correction, less regret. Attention makes life smoother by reducing errors born from haste. Heraclitus believed that wisdom comes from understanding the logos, the underlying order of all things. The Stoic applies this idea inwardly. They seek to understand the logos of their own thoughts. Through mindfulness, they observe the flow of impressions and reactions without being carried away. They learn to see emotion arise and dissolve. This awareness breaks the chain of impulsive reaction. Life becomes easier when emotions are noticed, not obeyed. Marcus Aurelius warned himself against letting the mind be pulled like a puppet by desire or fear. He practiced the pause, a small space of awareness between event and response. This pause is where freedom lives. Mindfulness expands this space. Each time one pauses before reacting, they assert sovereignty over circumstance. Ease begins when the mind no longer drifts with every current. It becomes the still point in a moving world. Distraction fragments identity. Presence restores unity. The person constantly pulled between screens, schedules, and expectations forgets who they are. The Stoic remembers through stillness. When the mind quiets, the self reappears. Clarity returns. This recollection is not mystical, it is mechanical. Attention, directed inward, reconnects the individual to purpose. The more present one becomes, the less lost they feel. Heraclitus saw fire as the symbol of life, always changing, never static. The Stoic mind reflects that fire, alert, aware, burning cleanly in each moment. Mindfulness keeps that flame steady. When attention flickers, confusion enters. When attention is held, perception sharpens. The world itself becomes simpler, not because it changes, but because the gaze no longer distorts it. Presence aligns perception with reality. Marcus Aurelius often wrote about the brevity of life, urging himself to use each moment wisely. Mindfulness honors this brevity. It prevents waste through awareness. Every distracted hour is a lost fragment of existence. The Stoic conserves life by noticing it. To stay mindful is to stretch time, to experience it fully rather than let it vanish unnoticed. Life feels longer, richer, and lighter when each moment is inhabited completely. To make life easier this year, the Stoic must simplify attention. Choose one focus at a time. When eating, taste. When walking, notice. When working, engage. The difficulty of life multiplies when the mind divides. Single tasking is not inefficiency, it is mastery. Every act performed with presence becomes meditation in motion. Even the smallest task, done consciously, becomes an act of peace. Heraclitus taught that wisdom is to understand the flow rather than fight it. The Stoic practices mindfulness as alignment with flow. They accept change without panic, transition without resistance, and loss without despair. Presence allows adaptation. When one stays aware of the current, they adjust smoothly instead of breaking against it. Flexibility is born from attention. The flexible endure easily because they do not resist the inevitable. Mindfulness requires humility. To be present is to accept the limits of control, to realize that one can only act within this moment. The Stoic does not escape into fantasy or nostalgia. They face what is here. This acceptance reduces mental friction. Half of suffering comes from resisting what already exists. Presence dissolves that resistance by aligning thought with reality. Ease appears naturally when imagination stops warring with fact. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself to return to the present when the mind wandered. He called it returning to reason. The Stoic uses the same command today. When overwhelmed by uncertainty, they return to the task at hand. When anxious, they return to the breath. When distracted, they return to awareness. This repetition trains stability. Over time, the mind learns to remain where the body is. Life becomes simpler when thought and action occupy the same moment. Distraction seduces with novelty. Mindfulness satisfies with depth. The modern world offers infinite stimuli, but little fulfillment. The Stoic chooses depth over volume. They would rather know one thing well than skim 1,000. They would rather live 1 hour fully than sleepwalk through 10. Quality replaces quantity as the measure of existence. The deeper one's presence, the lighter one's life becomes. Heraclitus said that character is destiny. The Stoic interprets this as the idea that one's habitual attention shapes fate. A distracted life produces scattered results. A mindful life produces coherent outcomes. The state of attention determines the quality of experience. To practice mindfulness, therefore, is to practice authorship of life. The attentive become architects of calm, while the distracted remain passengers of chaos. Marcus Aurelius believed that mindfulness was inseparable from virtue. To be present is to be responsible. When attention lapses, moral clarity fades. The Stoic remains aware to act rightly. Mindfulness becomes the guardian of integrity. The aware mind sees consequences before they arrive. It acts with foresight instead of impulse. This foresight prevents mistakes that complicate life. Awareness protects peace. To cultivate mindfulness, the Stoic uses simple practices: silence, observation, breath, stillness. They treat each as a form of maintenance for the mind. These are not rituals of escape, but exercises of engagement. Through them, awareness is sharpened daily. The result is less distraction, fewer regrets, and greater harmony. Life grows easier when consciousness no longer leaks through unnoticed moments. Heraclitus warned that most people sleep through their lives. The Stoic strives to wake fully. Each moment of awareness is an awakening from unconscious drift. To live awake is to see clearly, choose consciously, and act deliberately. Awakening removes confusion. When confusion ends, struggle softens. The awake person carries no unnecessary weight. They walk lightly because they are here, now, fully alive. To stay present is to regain mastery of time. Past and future shrink to their rightful size, memories and possibilities, not prisons. The Stoic lives free because their attention is unchained. They do not mourn what has ended, nor fear what has not begun. They operate in the narrow but infinite field of the present. Within that field, life feels whole. To make life easier this year, practice attention as a daily craft. Observe without reaction. Engage without distraction. Rest without guilt. This rhythm strengthens presence until it becomes instinct. The Stoic who lives in awareness moves with the current of existence, not against it. They navigate calmly because they see clearly. Mindfulness becomes their unseen armor, protecting peace in a noisy world. Presence is the art of meeting life directly. It does not remove difficulty but removes confusion around it. The Stoic meets each moment as it comes, without delay or distortion. In that meeting lies liberation. Life only happens now. The rest is echo and anticipation. The person who learns to stay here, fully aware, has already made life easier, for they no longer carry the weight of what does not exist. Chapter 8. Master yourself before the world. The world cannot be controlled, but the self can. The Stoics built their philosophy upon this truth. Epictetus said that freedom begins the moment one learns to command their own mind. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, yet his journal is filled not with the language of power, but of restraint. Both understood that mastery of the self is the highest authority a person can possess. To make life easier, one must begin where power truly resides, within. Modern life distracts with illusions of influence. People chase visibility, status, and external validation while neglecting the one arena that defines all others: inner order. The Stoic reverses this. They see mastery as an inward conquest, not a public display. The disciplined person is not controlled by impulse. They act according to principle, not reaction. Their strength is quiet, steady, and absolute. The world bends toward such a person naturally, for they are unshakable. Epictetus taught that self-control is the true form of freedom. Every act of restraint is an act of liberation. To command appetite is to command destiny. The person ruled by desire, anger, or fear is a servant of chaos. The Stoic trains daily to reduce this servitude. They shape habits until order becomes instinct. Routine replaces chaos. This discipline creates space between impulse and action, between stimulus and choice. In that space lives sovereignty. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the mind adapts and transforms every obstacle into purpose. Such adaptability comes only through discipline. The undisciplined mind collapses under change. The disciplined one molds it into advantage. Life becomes easier when internal structure replaces emotional volatility. The Stoics' routines, reading, reflection, restraint, become armor. Consistency is not restriction, it is release from the unpredictable. The modern obsession with trends and shortcuts contradicts Stoic order. The Stoic rejects fads because they demand constant reinvention. Discipline provides permanence. The person anchored in consistent habits requires no external novelty to sustain progress. They live by rhythm, not reaction. Each day repeats core actions: waking early, exercising control, thinking clearly, speaking truthfully. Simplicity replaces complexity. Repetition becomes power. Epictetus advised his students to look first within before seeking to influence others. He said, "If you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." True mastery is invisible at first. It happens in silence, through small, consistent choices that others overlook. The disciplined person wakes when they say they will, finishes what they start, and speaks less than they think. Each act of self-command builds unseen strength. Over time, that strength becomes unmistakable. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself to do the work of a human being, to perform his duty without complaint, to hold his mind steady, to act with justice, and to remain indifferent to reward. This daily adherence to principle creates ease. When decisions are guided by virtue, not impulse, life simplifies. The disciplined person does not waste energy debating what they already decided. Principle becomes automation. Routine becomes peace. Self-mastery begins with observation. The Stoic studies themselves as carefully as a scholar studies text. They note tendencies toward laziness, anger, indulgence, distraction. Awareness is the first form of control. One cannot command what one does not understand. The disciplined mind watches without judgment, then corrects quietly. Every moment of awareness is a rehearsal for restraint. Gradually, weakness loses territory. The modern individual often seeks motivation before movement. The Stoic inverts this. Movement generates motivation. Discipline does not depend on emotion. It produces emotion. Action first, feeling later. By showing up consistently, training, writing, working, reflecting, the Stoic creates momentum. This momentum becomes identity. The disciplined person no longer asks whether they feel like acting. They act because it is who they are. Epictetus warned against mistaking talk for practice. Philosophy, he said, is not words but deeds. The same is true for discipline. Plans, intentions, and affirmations mean nothing without execution. Self-mastery is not thought. It is repetition under pressure. The Stoic measures progress not by what they know, but by what they do repeatedly when no one watches. Mastery is forged in private long before it appears in public. The undisciplined mind reacts to every disturbance. The disciplined one filters stimuli through principle. When insulted, they remain calm. When delayed, they remain patient. When tempted, they remain composed. These responses simplify existence. Chaos outside loses power over order inside. This is the hidden benefit of self-control. It reduces unnecessary suffering. The disciplined person experiences fewer emotional storms because they no longer create them. Marcus Aurelius wrote that waste no longer belongs to the wise mind. Wasted time, wasted words, wasted thoughts. All are thefts from self-command. The Stoic simplifies by removing excess. They do not chase every opportunity or respond to every opinion. Focus becomes economy. The more selective one becomes, the more strength they retain. Ease follows naturally because attention is no longer scattered. Discipline does not harden the Stoic. It refines them. True self-mastery does not suppress emotion, but governs it. The disciplined person feels deeply, but directs feeling wisely. Their calm is not emptiness, it is control. Every emotion passes through judgment before expression. The result is steadiness. People around them feel safer, decisions become cleaner, and days flow with less turbulence. Epictetus described the disciplined mind as a fortress that cannot be taken. Such a fortress is not built overnight. It requires daily labor, rising early, keeping promises, controlling appetite, completing work. Each day strengthens the walls. Each temptation resisted lays another stone. Eventually, the fortress becomes impenetrable. Life grows easier because external forces can no longer breach internal stability. Discipline transforms freedom from fantasy into fact. The person who governs themselves does not depend on external permission. They are free in every environment, rich or poor, praised or condemned, successful or struggling, because their behavior is chosen, not dictated. This independence creates peace. Life simplifies when nothing external can compel internal collapse. Marcus Aurelius said that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Discipline chooses those colors deliberately. Routine paints each day with intention instead of chaos. When the mind is structured, life feels lighter. Disorder multiplies confusion. Order multiplies strength. The disciplined Stoic organizes their environment to match their mind, clean, efficient, balanced. Simplicity in surroundings reinforces simplicity in thought. Epictetus urged his students to separate what is within their power from what is not. and then act only where power exists. Discipline enforces that separation. It prevents wasted energy on uncontrollable outcomes. When one's focus is limited to their actions, their anxiety decreases. The world's complexity no longer overwhelms because the field of control has been reduced to the self. Within that field, mastery becomes absolute. Modern culture glorifies spontaneity, but Stoicism glorifies steadiness. The Stoic does not chase variety for stimulation. They chase consistency for strength. Predictability becomes an advantage. Each repeated act of discipline compounds like interest. Days become simpler because decisions shrink. There is less to think about, less to fix, less to regret. Discipline is structure, and structure is peace. Marcus Aurelius warned himself to stand upright, not be held upright. This is the essence of mastery, to be self-sustaining. The person who depends on external discipline remains fragile. The Stoic builds internal scaffolding. They rely on conscience, not crowd. They hold themselves to standard without supervision. This independence creates stability that no disruption can remove. The one who needs nothing to stay steady remains powerful everywhere. Self-mastery is the foundation of all other virtues. Without discipline, wisdom is theory, courage is impulse, and justice is preference. Discipline makes virtue consistent. The Stoic cultivates it through repetition, reflection, and restraint. Over time, effort transforms into identity. The disciplined person no longer pretends to be strong. They are strong. Life becomes easier because strength has replaced struggle. Epictetus compared the philosopher to an athlete of the soul. Every challenge is a training session, every temptation a test of form. The Stoic embraces this athletic view of life. They welcome difficulty as practice for endurance. This mindset turns obstacles into opportunities for mastery. When each hardship becomes training, no hardship feels wasted. Life simplifies when struggle becomes purposeful. The modern individual often changes direction at every sign of discomfort. The Stoic remains steady. Discipline anchors them when emotion fluctuates. They continue working when enthusiasm fades, continue exercising when tired, continue reflecting when busy. This persistence builds momentum that outlasts moods. Ease arises when one stops negotiating with effort and simply acts. Marcus Aurelius believed that virtue is a matter of habit. He wrote daily reminders to act according to reason, to hold the line even when fatigued. The disciplined person replicates this practice through journaling, scheduling, and self-review. Each night they examine actions and adjust course. This feedback loop replaces guilt with growth. Self-correction is easier than self-condemnation, and through it, the Stoic evolves cleanly. Discipline creates clarity in goals. The undisciplined chase many aims. The disciplined pursue few. This narrowing of focus reduces chaos. The person who knows what to ignore saves energy. The Stoic directs attention like a laser toward improvement, contribution, and virtue. Life feels easier because direction replaces drift. Every effort aligns towards something permanent. Epictetus taught that the measure of a person is how they handle what they cannot avoid. Discipline prepares for this inevitability. It strengthens the will before trials appear. When fate strikes, the disciplined mind responds with order. They do what can be done, endure what must be endured, and maintain composure throughout. That posture turns difficulty into calm execution. The disciplined suffer less because they resist less. Marcus Aurelius often wrote about self-sufficiency as a moral imperative. He sought to be content with what he had, steady in what he faced, and moderate in what he desired. The Stoic who follows this example finds freedom through reduction. The fewer dependencies one has, the lighter they move through life. Discipline trims excess, leaving only what matters. Simplicity through restraint becomes the essence of peace. To make life easier this year, the Stoic must build habits that serve virtue rather than vanity. Wake early, train body and mind, keep promises, speak less, work cleanly, reflect nightly. These simple disciplines compound into calm strength. The chaotic live reactively, the disciplined live predictably. Predictability brings stability, and stability brings ease. Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius both taught that mastery of the self precedes mastery of the world. The person who cannot command their impulses cannot lead their life. The Stoic reverses this weakness through consistent training of thought and action. Discipline becomes the architecture of freedom. Once the inner world is ordered, the outer world follows naturally. Master yourself before the world. The world will remain unpredictable, but the self can remain prepared. Discipline is the bridge between chaos and command, between reaction and response. Build that bridge daily, step by step, until walking it becomes effortless. When discipline becomes nature, life itself becomes easier, because the one who commands themselves fears nothing outside their command. Chapter 9. Let go and be at peace. Ease begins when attachment ends. The Stoics taught that most suffering is self-inflicted, born from clinging to what was never ours to command. Seneca said that life is not short, but we make it so by wasting it in anxiety over things beyond control. Epictetus reminded his students that freedom is found in detachment, that the less one depends on external outcomes, the calmer one becomes. Letting go is not surrender, it is mastery of perspective. The mind freed from obsession walks lightly through life. Modern society trains people to hold tightly, to outcomes, to validation, to the image of success. Every disappointment then feels like defeat, every delay like failure. The Stoic sees through this illusion. They understand that attachment to what fluctuates guarantees disturbance. To let go is to accept the structure of reality, a world in motion, indifferent to preference. The person who accepts this truth stops wrestling with fate and begins flowing with it. That alignment is peace. Seneca wrote that the wise person is content with what happens, knowing that it happens according to universal law. This is not fatalism, it is clarity. Events do not harm, judgments do. The Stoic releases expectation before it tightens into dependency. When outcomes come, they welcome them. When they do not, they remain calm. Life becomes easier when the will ceases to demand and begins to cooperate. Epictetus taught that tranquility depends on distinguishing what belongs to us and what does not. He said, "Seek not for events to happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do happen, and your life will go well." Letting go begins with this mental separation. The Stoic acts with precision in what can be influenced and releases what cannot. This discipline cleans the mind of noise and the heart of turbulence. Ease follows naturally when attention is directed where control is real. Letting go does not mean apathy, it means focus. The Stoic still acts, but without desperation. They pursue goals with effort, not attachment. Their peace does not depend on success, because their satisfaction lies in the quality of effort, not the result. When results arrive, they accept them. When they do not, they learn. Each outcome is information, not identity. This posture transforms striving into serenity. Seneca advised his students to imagine loss before it happens, to reflect on the impermanence of all things. This exercise was not morbid, it was liberating. When one rehearses loss, one loosens attachment. Everything borrowed by time must be returned. The Stoic learns to appreciate without clinging, to love without possession, to hold without fear. This is how letting go becomes strength. It frees one to live fully without constant dread of loss. Modern life amplifies attachment through comparison. Social media creates endless measurement. Who has more? Who does better? Who receives greater praise? The Stoic escapes this trap through detachment from others' standards. They measure success by alignment with virtue, not visibility. The person who detaches from comparison reclaims energy for self-improvement. Peace grows when the gaze turns inward instead of outward. Epictetus said that wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. Detachment reduces wants to necessities, clearing mental clutter. The person who desires less suffers less. This does not mean renouncing ambition, but refining it. The Stoic desires excellence, not applause, purpose, not popularity. In that refinement, tranquility returns. Want less, and you will walk lighter. Seneca observed that people suffer more in imagination than in reality. Much of life's pain comes from replaying what might happen or what has happened. The Stoic breaks this cycle by grounding in the present. They let go of imaginary catastrophes and emotional rehearsals. The past cannot be altered, the future cannot be owned, and both lose their power when attention stays here. The mind free from time is the mind free from torment. Letting go also means forgiving others and oneself. Resentment is a form of attachment, a fixation on injury. The Stoic releases it not to excuse wrong, but to remove poison. Seneca wrote that anger is a short madness. To hold on to anger is to surrender reason. Forgiveness restores balance. By letting go of resentment, one reclaims peace. The world remains imperfect, but the soul remains untouched. Epictetus reminded his students that insult and injury harm only if accepted. Detachment includes emotional autonomy. The Stoic trains to separate opinion from essence. Words do not define the disciplined, reactions do. When one stops needing validation, criticism loses its sting. This is liberation, not from others, but from the ego that interprets everything as personal. Peace expands as ego dissolves. Ego is the heaviest burden. It demands recognition, superiority, control. The Stoic dismantles it through humility. Marcus Aurelius wrote that fame after death means being remembered by those who soon will die as well. Perspective dismantles illusion. The disciplined mind asks, what truly matters? What remains when the noise fades? The Stoic focuses on action, not applause. They perform each duty with precision, knowing the result belongs to fate. This detachment reduces anxiety because effort becomes its own completion. When one measures success by discipline instead of result, peace becomes attainable daily. Consistency replaces craving. Work becomes meditation instead of struggle. Seneca said that fortune has no jurisdiction over the wise. This statement rests on detachment. When happiness no longer depends on luck, it cannot be taken away. The Stoic builds an internal kingdom that no event can conquer. Every loss becomes surface level. Every setback becomes material for virtue. Letting go is not withdrawal from life, but insulation from chaos. The calmer the interior, the easier the exterior feels. The modern person carries constant tension, ambition tangled with expectation, progress tangled with pressure. Letting go untangles this knot. The Stoic works diligently, but releases the illusion of control over timing and outcome. They do not fight the current, they navigate it. Acceptance is not laziness, it is efficiency. Energy once spent on resistance becomes available for improvement. Epictetus told his followers to approach every external as if lending, not owning. Family, possessions, position, all are temporary loans. Gratitude replaces entitlement when one sees life this way. Loss hurts less because it was always expected. The Stoic does not harden their heart to avoid pain. They strengthen it to endure it. This strength comes from perspective. Nothing truly ours can ever be lost. Letting go simplifies priorities. The person who clings to everything divides themselves across too many attachments. The Stoic reduces life to essentials: virtue, reason, presence. Every unnecessary concern dropped makes existence lighter. Ease increases as possessions, opinions, and obligations are refined to what truly serves growth. Detachment is the art of keeping only what cannot be taken. Seneca reminded himself that calm is a matter of choice, not circumstance. The Stoic does not wait for peace to arrive. They choose it by releasing disturbance. The act of letting go is an act of will. When something disrupts peace, the Stoic asks, "Does this belong to my control?" If not, release it. Every release returns a fragment of strength. Life becomes easier when attention no longer clings to what resists control. Epictetus warned against confusing indifference with negligence. Letting go does not mean disengaging from life. It means engaging correctly, acting without attachment, loving without possession, striving without fear. Detachment refines action into clarity. The Stoic moves through the world like a skilled craftsman, steady, patient, unhindered by outcomes. Their focus is on form, not reward. Peace grows from precision. Modern minds are restless because they are overloaded. To let go is to empty the vessel. The Stoic declutters thought through silence, reflection, and solitude. In quiet, attachment reveals itself. Every anxiety traced back to something held too tightly. Through reflection, the grip loosens. The quieter one becomes, the clearer life appears. Simplicity replaces strain. Stillness becomes strength. Seneca believed that true wealth is the ability to live without needing much. Detachment produces this wealth. The person content with less cannot be impoverished. Every dependency removed adds stability. Ease arises when one no longer negotiates constantly with desire. The Stoic lives well because they need little to live well. That economy of need is the architecture of freedom. Letting go is the final evolution of discipline. The beginner controls action. The master controls attachment. To release outcome while maintaining excellence is the height of Stoic practice. This union of effort and detachment transforms performance into peace. The archer draws the bow, aims steadily, releases cleanly, and accepts the flight. The act is complete regardless of where the arrow lands. Epictetus said that events themselves are neutral. Only interpretation makes them heavy. The Stoic lightens life by choosing interpretation wisely. They see setback as instruction, loss as reminder, change as nature. When every event serves meaning, nothing feels wasted. This outlook creates unbreakable tranquility, a stillness that endures through all seasons. Seneca advised that death itself should be viewed as natural, not dreadful. To accept even the end of life is to reach the highest form of peace. Detachment from mortality removes the last fear. The Stoic does not rush toward death, but they cease fearing it. When fear ends, life begins fully. Letting go, in this sense, is total freedom. Freedom from all that enslaves through attachment. To make life easier this year, learn the art of release. Release comparison. Release control. Release the need to win every encounter or prove every point. Each release subtracts tension. The lighter the mind, the stronger the focus. The Stoic who practices this lives cleanly, acting with purpose, detached from vanity, calm in victory, composed in loss. Seneca and Epictetus both taught that peace is not given, it is cultivated. It grows where expectation ends and acceptance begins. To let go is not to lose, but to clear space for peace to enter. When one finally releases the weight of control, life begins to flow instead of drag. The mind rests, the soul steadies. The world remains the same, but perception transforms. That transformation is ease, the quiet mastery of living lightly in a heavy world.